Welcome to Mental Architectures. Dismantling the Infinite Monkey Theorem. I have a confession to make. I take some kind of perverse pleasure in challenging commonly held beliefs. I imagine Eratosthenes, Copernicus, and even Jesus Christ getting a kick out of destroying widely accepted paradigms with radical ideas backed by reason more than evidence, since logic, I believe, free of fallacies, is the strongest evidence there is. And all this because other kinds of evidence can be broadly manipulated, misinterpreted, and misrepresented, willingly or not. So, in my quest for philosophically induced dismantling of cherished beliefs, motivated perhaps by the sheer challenge of confronting my own biases, I sought to identify cornerstones of ideological waves of thought, and then attempt to unleash the force of unsettling, chaotic skepticism upon them. Because, beyond overdramatic, flamboyant speaking patterns, such as the one you're listening to right now, nothing does a greater disservice to your premise than a bad argument. So, one such thought experiment was my skeptical analysis of the Infinite Monkey Theorem. Okay, enough with the intellectual babble. Let's get down to business. The Infinite Monkey Theorem asserts the notion that a hypothetical monkey typing randomly and unintelligibly for an eternity could end up producing, to the exact detail, all the works of Shakespeare, given enough time, of course. This says that, given an infinite time, infinite possibilities become possible. This thought experiment is a basic argument for Darwinian evolution, as it supports the plausibility of randomly created complexity and order without any purpose, intelligent design, or causality. It is used as a counterargument to the irreducible complexity argument for religion and theism, which says that certain structures in nature are too complex to have emerged by themselves, and therefore intelligent design and causality are required for the existence of the universe. On the other hand, the Infinite Monkey Theorem states that, given enough time, all conceivable complexity can emerge out of nothing. Let me just throw in a disclaimer here before I continue. I don't know if the universe is random or whether it's a simulation of some kind. I used to be torn between religion and nihilism years back, but now I don't care. And let me explain why. If there's no purpose to the universe, then there's no point wasting time trying to find it. If there is purpose and there's a creator of some kind, it clearly doesn't care enough to let us know, or maybe we are incapable of knowing. And anyway, I don't know if proving an inherent causality of the existence of the universe doesn't simply drag us into an infinite regression of who created the creator of the creator and so on. And if that's at all relevant to, or perhaps comprehensible by, the clearly limited perception of the human mind. Even though the Infinite Monkey Theorem is widely accepted as logically sound, I will take it with a grain of salt and question its validity as a theoretical argument for the random emergence of complex life structures. If you want to support evolution over creation, you need to get rid of bad arguments because they weaken your case. Now, let us re-examine the Infinite Monkey Theorem. It goes a little bit like this. Infinite randomness will certainly end up with infinite possibilities, and given enough time, anything that can happen will happen. If you have an eternity representing infinite possibilities and a typing monkey representing randomness, you will at some point end up with complete works of intelligible literature. Because in an eternity, everything is possible, right? Well, wrong. And bear with me for a minute. Even though I feel like an infinite monkey every time I sit in front of the laptop pretending to write, I don't think that this theorem is logically valid. And here's why. This theorem is based on the assumption that a monkey's keystrokes are sufficiently randomized. Randomization is a non-random rule in itself, even though this does sound paradoxical. I don't question Darwinian evolution here, but rather I am simply skeptical and perhaps cynical of this theorem's value as a valid argument for Darwinian evolution and for the randomly emerged complexity of the universe. The Infinite Monkey Theorem is a bad analogy because random monkeys do not type perfectly randomly. Monkeys type in the quite limiting manner that their clumsy, thick fingers allow them. They would mostly hit keys adjacent to each other, and you would perhaps never get specific combinations of keys because they would require dexterity and elaborateness that randomness does not allow. For example, a monkey hitting a keyboard would get many combinations of the letter J, for example, and the keys around it, but may never achieve a combination of letters whose keys are distant and need elaborate, purposeful keystroking. Therefore, given infinite time, it would get infinite letter combinations from adjacent keys, and perhaps 0 combinations of letters whose keys are of a certain distance apart on a keyboard. To perform otherwise would mean that we're not really dealing with a stupid monkey, but rather with a computer program that is programmed to produce sufficiently randomized letter combinations to ensure the creation of any and all sequences possible. However, this requires the setting of a specific rule, a rule which in itself is not random. A similar argument to the infinite monkey is the tornado in a junkyard thought experiment. This one is almost identical, saying that if you have a junkyard full of 747 airplane parts, and then you add a tornado randomly shuffling those parts for an eternity, you'd get a complete and functional 747 airplane. Even here, the paradigm is too simplistic. Putting a plane together is not like a puzzle. There's an intricate process in attaching together electronic and mechanical parts, and also stitching them together, positioning them in such a way that the violent and predictable movement patterns of a tornado would probably never allow. Also, the right temperature at the right time and in the right place is important when assembling an airplane, something that a tornado cannot accommodate. So, an infinite tornado could yield infinite combinations of parts and infinite reoccurrences of the same combinations, but none of them would be the functional 747. No one says that the same combinations can't be repeated infinitely. Infinite time does not guarantee infinite possible results. It guarantees infinite duplicates of limited possibilities. An easy way to see this is by imagining the infinite points on a line, let's say on a ruler between the number 1 and 2. We know there are infinite theoretical points for every dimension. There are infinite possibilities of points on that line between 1 and 2, but none of those points will ever be point 3. So infinity, it seems, is finite. To assume perfect randomization is to assume an elaborate purpose, which makes the Infinite Monkey Theorem self-defeating. To end up with infinite random possibilities in infinite time, we require a rule, which in itself is not a random thing. This realization, like most philosophy, serves to further confuse us in our search for the truth, but it makes the journey while sailing the boat of philosophy much more interesting. Thank you for listening.